And good evening, all. Welcome to the January workshop with the Mayor and City Council for the City of Taneytown. Thank you for hanging with us as we work on some technical issues, but we're going to begin with our pledge to the flag, and I'll ask Mayor Pro Tem Fuller to lead us in that pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Let the records reflect that all council members are present and accounted for this evening. We'll begin with our review of the minutes from the December 7th and December 12th regular meetings. Are there any changes necessary for the minutes as presented to you, council? All right. The only thing I would like to have added to the December 7th workshop is where it says all public hearings were closed at 7:46 p.m. I believe we should state that there was no public comment made during that period. All right, one last chance for members of council. Anything? All right, that will be up for your approval on Monday evening. I'm going to go a little bit out of order here. I'm going to begin next with our council member's statement regarding conflicts of interest. So I'll ask members of council, are you conflicted on anything this evening?
No, sir.
For the record, I serve on the Family Selection Committee for Habitat for Humanity.
Very good. And that's been cleared with the city attorney that provides no conflict of interest for Councilmember Foster during this period. But it is out in the open and appreciated. All right. Nothing else. We go to reception of delegation. We have Scott Swartz from the Habitat for Humanity here to present to us. If you'll please come up to the podium.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me. I have a few documents I'd like to share with you guys. Pass them around.
All right. When you return to lectern, if you can just kind of pick the microphone up a little bit. Thank you.
Shorter person was here the last time.
Yeah, exactly. That way our followers at home can hear you.
Yes, very good. As you may or may not know, I'm sure you all know, we are getting ready to start our build here in Taneytown. Excuse me, hopefully in early spring. We've been trying to do this ever since before COVID. COVID has thrown a big monkey wrench in our plans. We originally wanted to start this back in 2020, but COVID had other plans for us. We couldn't get volunteers. Then we tried again later on. Our prices skyrocketed. It put us in a big bind and made it difficult for us to provide affordable housing, which is what our goal is. We are finally ready. We're going to get started. We have, if you notice, the one shows the estimate, shows our pre-COVID cost and our post-COVID cost. We've made some adjustments on many of the areas. What we're building is a LEED certified home, which is exemplifies what we're doing as far as making sure that we make good use of our carbon footprint and being a responsible to the community. With all the changes we made, we've been able to lower our cost a little bit, but we're still way above where we wanted to be and to make this an affordable house for our new buyers. What I would ask kindly of the council, if we could get some subsidization for the cost for hooking up water and sewer. It's a very huge expense for us in this build. Out of permits and fees, we're at just over $17,000, with $16,000 of that being for water and sewer hookup. I know it's not a common thing for a builder to come in and ask for this sort of thing. But as us being a nonprofit and trying to assist the community, we look for help wherever we can get it, being business or government. And what we plan on doing here in Taneytown, we think is an excellent thing. Not only the house that we're building now, but in the future, we're in talks with a landowner. That's a small parcel of land, which we hope to be able to build hopefully a little veterans village. That is our next goal. Up until then, up until now, everything we've done has been in Westminster, and we want to break out of Westminster. So this build in Taneytown is a start, but we don't want it to be the last. So as I say, I'm just asking that we could get some assistance from the town on these hookup fees.
Scott, the small parcel of land that you referred to, that's in Taneytown.
That is in Taneytown, correct?
And you've purchased that parcel at this time?
We have
or-
not purchased
Not
it
yet,
yet.
okay.
We're in talks.
Okay.
If you see on the other handout, I'm sure you're reading, but the need for the work that we do here in Carroll County and the need that the work that Habitat does, not only around the country, but around the world. It's much needed. The cost for someone to find a house, especially here in Carroll County, is exorbitant. It's just hard to believe how some of these people can even afford to live. And when you look at what they're spending, how much of their income they're spending on housing, and when they have to make the decision, where do we have a shelter? Do we have a roof over our head? Do we have food? Do we have to take care of our medical needs? All these things come into play. So what we try to do is make it a little bit easier.
So one of your lines here answers my question. Typically, Habitat finances these for the.
Correct. And that is usually our goal.
Right.
And that this was an exception here on this build up here, partially because of the price of this. It was a little bit more of an expensive build, being LEED certified. And also in the timing, when we decided to start this build, we were also in full fundraising for the Restore to get that open. So a lot of our focus was on the Restore at the time.
So with this request, how would the town go about doing that? In terms of units, would it just be waived and that's that? Where would we make up the difference in terms of?
Well, that's for the council to decide whether they wanted to waive, to reduce, to somehow subsidize a portion or all of. That's up to the council if they wish to act on this. We currently don't have a program for these types of things. In the past, we've, extended more or less payment plans on it. Of course, it's a little bit different because Habitat is building and then it's being sold. So that's kind of a difference there, is that the property owner would end up being responsible for that if we were to do it that way. So it's kind of a unique request. It's also a unique program. We haven't had Habitat in town before. So it's something we need to discuss, and I can assure you, we're not going to be making a decision on this evening.
Right.
Is there any other highlights from these papers? I mean, we can sit here and read all of them, which I plan to do later, but what highlights do we have outside of?
I think basically it's just the, excuse me, a lot, if you look at the cost estimates, I think that's what shines a big light on how much the cost for this house has increased through COVID and even what we're doing. I mean, eventually, like I said, the property was donated to us back in 2016. We look, we're a nonprofit, but we're also a business of trying to build for the future. So when we get that property, yes, it's donated to us, but we plan to use that property to build more in the future. So we were going to sell that as part of the house for $20,000, but at this point we can't even do that. So we're not even pulling anything to help us build our next house. We're just basically going to break even on this, if that.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at some of these increases are absolutely mind-boggling.
They are.
It's, Porch and deck material, 277% increase. Plumbing sprinklers, 168% increase. Just mind-boggling.
It is.
It's,
Every little thing plays into our supply chain issues and fuel cost, which affects our plastic and the plumbing.
right, right.
I don't think it's a disagreeable request at all. And I think it's a unique request that comes from a unique context. I mean, it's not routine that we deal with the consequences of something like COVID. And I mean, you're not just any builder, right? I mean, like you said, this is a springboard property to do more good.
Correct.
I think given your mission statement and everything that Habitat stands for, this would be something that we should do more research and hopefully grant. So I think as of tonight, based on what I've seen so far, I would be in favor of it. But how the math plays out is a different story.
Understood.
If it were a situation where, rather than just forgiving, if it was
Reduced.
or spread out over time, or is that something that you can work with? Only because, yes, all these prices have gone up, but this fee isn't just money that we've pulled out of the air either, right? It goes towards the actual work that we
understood.
have to do and what we have to contribute. And just like everybody else, costs have gone up for us as well across the board.
Right.
So, is there a hard line? Like, is there just,
How can I put a hard line?
well, and that's what I'm saying, like,
All I
if you're,
can
I
say is
mean,
anything
if it
that-
doesn't help you
Anything
by
the council
spreading
will-
it out,
Well, the spreading
like-
out really wouldn't help us.
Okay, so that's not something that you guys would eat even with the homeowner buying?
Yeah, that wouldn't help. I'm looking for any sort of forgiveness,
Okay.
be it 100% or 95%. I'll take 95.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, does council have any other questions for the gentleman this evening?
While I have your attention, and I just thought of this, and I think I spoke to Jim before about this, when we build a property, or whenever we're doing work on a property, a lot of our ability to do this is through sponsorship and people that have donated to our build. Part of the plus for them is to get free advertising, shall you say, that, hey, proud sponsor of Habitat. We always put a big billboard, usually a 4x8 sign on our property that says, this house being built thanks to such and such. Lance Chevrolet.
It's not me.
But anyway, so that's the kind of thing. I know right now the what is it, 2x3, I think is the, or is it?
Size.
Sign? It's pretty small and doesn't really give us the ability to recognize. So I would like if the council could also consider giving us forbearance on that so we can put up a sign during this. A 4x8 sign will hopefully give us enough room to put all of our, and again, we're not there to sell something, we're there just to recognize.
Right.
So,
One more question. How soon do you need an answer? What's your timeline?
let's see, we're going to be settling at the end of the month. I'd like to go for permits by the end of the month.
Okay.
So, or by your next meeting, that would be fine.
Okay.
We will see what we come up with.
Okay.
Thank you
all
for visiting
your
with
time.
us this evening.
I appreciate it.
All right, so to council, do you want this to be on the agenda Monday evening, or do you want more time to discuss? We're looking for more time?
Yeah.
So we're going to push to February? Okay.
Rush it.
We will push to February and look into this ourselves. With that, we'll go into public comment on anything not on the agenda this evening. If you would like to talk about anything you don't see on this piece of paper, now's your opportunity to do so. All right. Hearing nothing, we'll move right along. Up for approval on Monday evening will be a contract with Tower Stream. Mr. Ruprecht, do you want to guide us through what we have in front of us, sir?
Sure. Basically, well, I need to give a little history lesson for some folks up here. We started out with having equipment on our towers from Freedom Broadband. It was kind of a test case for them to see if there was a market for their wireless internet service. That's essentially a line of sight type system. So wherever folks outside of the city could have an antenna that would be in line or basically line of sight with our standpipe or elevated water tank, they could have high-speed internet, places where Comcast doesn't go, basically. Our initial contract was all in-kind services with Freedom Broadband. TowerStream bought Freedom Broadband, and since that point, Dan has been working on getting them to commit to a contract because we now have our own wireless network. We have our own equipment up on the towers, so we're no longer reliant on TowerStream as we were up until, well, you'll see it in Dan's report. You may have noticed that, until November. So now they're just basically like any, it's not cellular towers, but it's the same idea, basically. They're using space on our towers, and now rather than in-kind services being provided, they're going to pay rent. So the term of the contract is 3 years, and we'll be getting $1,600 a month for them renting the space at the standpipe and the elevated water tank. The city attorney has reviewed this and given it his okay as well.
All right, is there any questions from council on this one? Say it's identical to those we have with Sprint and
It's,
AT&T.
the equipment itself is different,
Is
but the
different,
same,
right.
but the
But the
lease is
terms-
structured very similarly, right? We have the
Right.
takedown language in there that if we have to do additional maintenance on the tank, that you know, that they will provide them another location, you know, at the same site, you know, on a temporary basis, and that we intend to limit those events to one per contract term if we need to invoke that. But that's the language we've been trying to add to all the cell contracts now, too.
Right. Okay, will these, are these items in place now?
The majority of them are. They're on the pump house, let's see, yep, on the pump house one, the standpipe, they're currently the ones, the first 4 that are top of tank have been taken down because they're in the midst of upgrading, so there will be, those pieces will be replaced up there. And there is a notation on
On brake iron, I see
brake
that.
iron, yeah, that there's room for an additional dish to go on that that's not up currently, but the majority of everything is up now.
Right, because they just kind of
Right.
took over from Freedom. Okay. All right, last chance for questions from council. All right, that will be up for your approval on Monday evening. Up for adoption on Monday, we have Resolution 2023-01. This is water allocation for the month of January. And I'll ask council if they have any questions on that. All right. We'll move into Resolution 2023-02, our fee schedule for 2023. I'm going to go back to Ms. Reaper. Can you give us some highlights of this one? Has anything changed?
We are not proposing any changes, and this is really just kind of a housekeeping item. We've been adopting the fee schedule each year, whether we've had changes or not, so this will make it for the 2023 calendar year.
Okay. Questions? Everything clear on those items? All right. Then we'll go back to Mr. Weepick for City Manager Report. What do you have for us this evening, sir?
Okay, let's see. Charter and code review. As you know, we adopted a handful of ordinances revisions last month. What's on deck right now, I think we really need to focus on community village once again. I know we've had a lot of discussion about it, but we are hearing at the staff level from a variety now of developers and builders about the alley issue with community village. And if we do want to see development that's not the standard R10,000, 34-foot wide streets and 10,000 square foot lots, if we want to enable something that has a little bit tighter footprint and gets us more development per acre, and thus greater tax base for the amount of infrastructure that we maintain, I think we want to encourage the community village type approach. But the alleys do seem to really be a stumbling block for a number of different developers that in our area, that's not seen as being marketable right now. I'm not suggesting we get rid of the whole idea, but maybe we provide an option that maybe there's a community village that's the neo-traditional that has the alley and so on, and maybe there could even be a different type density for that one versus a non-traditional that would still invoke a lot of the same characteristics but not require the rear-loaded garages or the alleyways.
Clarification for the not marketable
Right.
with the alleys. Is it because the alleys in combination with the roads take up more space, thus there are fewer homes available?
It does require additional space to be dedicated, not just for the alleys, but for more stormwater management that relates to the additional impervious area on the site. But it sounds like as much as anything and that certainly reduces the potential lot yield on a parcel. But from a marketing standpoint, it just seems to be a difficult sell that what we're hearing is that the consumers want their garage to be attached to the house. So for a single-family house, to have a garage at the back of the backyard along an alley is not something that they can sell with any, reliably. So the market wants the garage attached to the house. And, and we may want to consider maybe there's some hybrid between, maybe a road that's exclusively townhomes perhaps would have the alleys, but single-family homes or semi-detached might not have to have the alleys. We've already kind of set precedent with Meads Crossing, where even when they were proposing alleys to begin with, the homes along the perimeter of the project were not going to be served by alleys. So, maybe some hybrid approach even where, the really high density areas like the townhome portions of a community maybe we still want the alleys to be mandated there, or maybe there's, a further density bonus that they get if they use the alleys or something like that to encourage it, maybe, but not mandate it. So we have some homework to do on it, but if there's consensus to consider relief on the alleys, we'll work with the Planning Commission and the city attorney and bring something back for you to review in the coming months. And we'd like to kind of jump on this because right now, as I noted in the report, we have 3 different projects, all of which are properties that have been designated as community villages, and none of them are expecting or proposing alleys. One is an age-restricted community. It's a relatively small project. It's 50 units. It's not a large parcel, and the majority of the units are bordering the boundary of the parcel. So that one really doesn't lend itself to the alleys, going by the prior precedent. But the other 2 are much bigger subdivisions. We've been talking about the Sewell Farm. They're trying to come up with some concepts to be able to come before the Planning Commission. And also Mountain Brook Farms has, come up with some designs. And that's another parcel that was designated as a community village many years ago. So I'd like to kind of get some direction Monday night. If there's interest in looking at some options there, we'll work with the Planning Commission and come up with something to bring back to you.
I think I would have been surprised if they came with designs with alleys. And I say that because every community village we've had has gone in without the alleys. And I'm not convinced that alleys are in our best interest, because now you're adding more surface that our guys need to plow, that we need to clean. Is it really in our best interest to have those in general? Does it really add that much to the aesthetic of something when, aside from what they're saying, I've seen that really a lot of places aren't building these anymore with the alleys. People want a rear yard, not a rear alley. And this is kind of why we tried to look at Community Village a couple months ago, is to get this ironed out then. I think we really need to look at it. Is it even important to us? Does it matter in the long run? And what effect is it going to have? So, Councilman Hand?
I like the idea of a hybrid for townhomes. It honestly has bothered me when we went through the evolution from 2008 or 9 to current for Meads Crossing, in which there were 5 amendments to the developmental rights and developer rights and responsibilities, such that it really didn't matter. So we can put these ideas out there or these guidelines or parameters, but ultimately, if they're going to be circumvented, what's the purpose? And when I say that, I mean we should not have granted that many amendments. We should have at some point
Reach it.
held the line.
That's right.
But I hear what you're saying. With that said, though, I would not want, not to vilify Levittown, Pennsylvania, but, you know, some sort of variety in presentation to the front. I think aesthetics are important, especially when we are considering maintaining an attractive small-town vibe. We don't just want to throw out a bunch of cookie cutters and think that we're homey.
I will refer to Carol Vista as what I consider to be even though it does not have alleys as Community Village prescribes, I think that it does recognize most of the Community Village aesthetic. The houses are, you know, relatively close to the road, closer than in a typical R10,000 subdivision. And the intent of that was to encourage folks to park in the garages and not in the driveways. And I think largely that was successful. I mean, not that you don't ever see a car in the driveway out there, but it does look like, you know, for the most part, folks do use the garage. And that may be in part because it is a little bit tight, you know, lengthwise for the driveway, for somebody to park there and not block the sidewalk. And that was really by design. Now, that is an age-restricted community, so the resident behavior may be different than a typical subdivision. You know, and there probably are not as many cars, you know, per household as with your typical subdivision. But I think from a design standpoint, you know, they have a lot of the amenities and the aesthetic aspect that Community Village is looking for. So,
I think
you
this
know, we
community village works better with that type of demographic, because when you look at community or developments at large, where they have 2.5 kids who eventually turn 16 and have their own cars, now you've got 4+ cars at a residence that, you know, it's with making streets as narrow as they have in Meads, you're really limited on parking in general. You're just clogging it up, and it looks horrendous after a while when you have the entire street lined with cars and in the garage, in the driveways. And that's where the alleys come from, is you keep all of that hidden from the back.
Well, then rather than just get rid of it, can you use it as a bargaining chip and just say either or? If you don't have the alleys, then you have more than adequate parking on the premise.
Street widths and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what needs to be negotiated when they come to the table. I mean, as Councilman Hand pointed out, you know, we gave a lot of exceptions to Meads.
They had a lot of changes.
They did. And I know at one point we went back to them and said, for all the concessions we're making, you need to do something as well. But overall, we need to make sure that we maintain ourselves in the driver's seat of these and that we're getting something that we can live with in the city. Because after their 10 years of building, they're gone. So, okay.
So,
Do you want a list of things? Are you going to make a list of things? How do you want to move forward, sir?
well, we'll come up with some ideas to present to the Planning Commission at their next meeting, and maybe come back next month with some of those suggestions. If we're very successful, that could be in draft ordinance format. But I certainly would be open to any input that council members have as well, of course, as to,
Let's give members of council a couple of days to digest it, and then Monday evening,
sure, we can have some more
if we
discussion.
can just discuss a little further then. We're not going to be voting on it, of course. But I think we should add it to the agenda for discussion only on Monday evenings. That way, the city manager has something from us to take to the planning commission as well.
Very good. Okay. And the only other real update we've got is that we did have our pre-construction meeting with CDM Smith, our engineer, and WF DeLauder, who won who was awarded the bid for the Roberts Mill Road and Broad Street project, as well as the replacement portion of the sewer rehab. And that went well. We're looking at a tentative start date for January 15th. The contractor's working through some bonding stuff right now. Paperwork's flowing back and forth, so hopefully we'll be on target for them to be able to get started very soon. And that's all for my report. I did want to make sure that everybody takes note of the Public Works Department report, though, with regard to water main breaks. We had quite a few of those this month, and so most of those were picked up by our leak detection equipment, so that investment is really paying for itself and then some. But the one that was not was at 11:30 at night, and the guys are coming in, digging up, a service lateral, and water can't be turned off in the street, and that's just the kind of thing that these guys do. And, a lot of times we don't think about what's involved with something like that, our guys are showing up at, in the wee hours, and then some of them got to go home so they could rest a little bit before coming back to push snow the next morning. So I just wanted to call that to your attention and make you aware of the efforts going on there. So
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. If you've never had a chance to observe DPW on a water main break, I highly encourage you to do it. Not that I want any more to happen, but if you ever hear about one happening and they're out there, I encourage you to go stand back and just watch them work, because those guys, it's a machine. They know what they're doing, and they tackle anything that comes up while they're doing it. So kudos to them. They do phenomenal work. Any questions for the city manager on his report or the departmental reports? All right. We'll move into our new business. We have the monthly financial report up for your consideration. Any questions or comments regarding the monthly financial report? All right. Hearing none, that'll be up for your approval Monday evening, as will the accounts payables. Is there any discussion on the accounts payables as presented this evening? All right, our next item of business is a request from the police department regarding their holidays. Are you prepared to speak to that, Mr. Weeprick?
I am. So when we went to the 12-hour shifts with the police department a few years ago, that certainly aided with the scheduling. But one thing that we also changed at that time was prior to that, the officers got basically a floating holiday that they were to use basically, one holiday per month, and then 1 month they would use two, because we have 13 holidays. That has, while we were looking into things and doing interviews down at the department about the time that Chief Etzler resigned, This is something that came up as an issue with some of the officers. There seems to have been some confusion about how it was presented. But basically, the ask was to consider going back to having that holiday, that day off, where they would just get essentially a floating holiday restored that was taken when we went to the 12-hour shifts. So as far as the financial end of it, you could argue that there's a savings because currently we pay overtime for the officers who are working the holiday on the holiday. So if they get that floating holiday, that overtime they'll just be working like their regular shift. However, there would be then another day for for each officer a month that there's no productivity. So from a productivity standpoint, we're paying people not to be there. So,
Well, someone else is going to have to work
right,
as well.
right, yes.
So we're paying
But we're-
2 people.
So instead of paying time and half, and with the department being close to fully staffed at this point, we've been assured that overtime won't be necessary to keep the shifts filled for the department. But again, it's a question, again, of, that's that many days by times that many officers where, they're not out patrolling. And somebody will be, because we always want to have at least 2 officers on a shift. But it sounds like, at this point, with the staff being nearly back to full staff, that they have the ability to absorb that additional day without having to cover shifts by paying overtime. So I hope I've portrayed it accurately, but that's the ask.
I think you have portrayed it, and I know that was the norm here for many years. Since this came to my attention, the request, I asked around to other mayors, and they all kind of laughed at it. None of them do that. It's highly unusual. Our goal has been to be competitive with other departments. That way we can attract officers, and we've done a tremendous job. Under the current schedule and holidays and everything, we've gotten more lateral officers than we've ever had in this department. So I don't think that we're failing to attract people. I think we're consistent now with every other department around us. So I think what we have is appropriate and works and in line with what others are doing. I'll open up to council for your thoughts.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
Jim, how long has the current holiday policy been in place?
3 years?
I'd
3
say
years?
2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Have we run the numbers versus the last 3 years of the old policy versus the past 3 years of the current policy? Have we noticed a difference? Has there been a savings?
There have been so many other moving parts.
Right,
with
and I
regard
understand
to
that, I
police
do.
that
Yeah.
that,
I'm just wondering, is there a way to come up with a definitive mathematical answers in terms of, do we save money with the current policy? Do we spend more money? Just to answer that bit, what the cost difference is.
I don't think we could in real world because of the extreme fluctuations of our department size.
Okay.
That's been the biggest issue.
Yeah.
It's going to prevent that from
we've
happening.
had so many vacancies, and so looking at payroll,
Yeah.
we've been our overtime has spiked when we've been short of staff, but then we haven't been paying fringe benefits for those vacant positions. So there's been a savings there, but then the additional overtime to fill the shifts has kind of offset it. So it'd be really difficult to.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely understand.
It would be hypothetical, I think,
Right.
if we tried to put some numbers together.
Okay.
And I think that really, if you wanted to try to come up with some sort of way to really analyze it, I think you would have to also take into account productivity as far as, citations and calls for service and so on. And we're also looking at a period where, well, we were coming out of the pandemic and things were run differently at that point. So I think with all the variables, it'd be really,
That's fair.
really
Just wanted to
a
ask.
tough shot.
Yep.
When all of this was brought to the council, going to 12-hour shifts, excuse me, and the holiday change, part of that was moving to 12-hour shifts. They have more days off in a month, and that is still true, correct? They have less but longer working days.
Right. So yes, they have more, I don't know, I should say calendar days off than they otherwise would, yes.
Right.
So, of course, they're working, a day and a half compared to,
Right.
Right.
I understand.
yeah. But yes, as far as like trips to and from the station, yes, they do have fewer of those.
So is my understanding that they believe it was explained to them differently than it was to us back then? Is that what I'm understanding?
I think for some of the officers. And with the turnover that we've had since that point, we have some officers who weren't around when
Right.
that change was made.
Right.
So, because we've had a lot of turnover since that point.
I would assume that this was put down as a written policy or whatever it was when it was approved. Is that correct?
I will have to see if it was updated in the police policies.
Okay.
I'll have that for you Monday night.
Okay. Other questions from council? Thoughts, input? Okay. Well, Monday evening, we'll be seeking a decision from council on how you would like to handle this request.
I have one comment.
Yes, please.
Why are we making decisions in the police department before we get some stability there?
That's a tremendous question to ask. Since right now we don't have a permanent chief.
I am not in favor of changing anything at this point until we get some stability in that department.
I think that's fair.
All right, well, Monday evening, let's make that decision and we'll go from there.
Just a quick addition to that, it was brought up tonight just because the holiday schedule has just started for the calendar year. That's the reason that it was pushed to talk about in January.
All right, our next topic is approval of special event permit for the Carroll County Humane Society Wolfstock, scheduled for June 17th. Any comments regarding this event? All right, hearing none, that'll be up for your approval on Monday evening. Our final piece of business this evening is filling the council member vacancy left by Joe Vigliotti when he became commissioner. This responsibility was given to Mayor Pro Tem Fuller, so I'm going to go to her and have her explain the process, how we got to this point, and then I'll take back over for the motion. Go ahead.
Well, it's a pretty simple process. We put out the call, and I received 6 resumes via email. All of those were forwarded to the other council members, so they had a chance to check it out. If they had any questions, they contacted me. If any of the applicants had any questions, they contacted me. And now we're just at a place where everybody has all the information they need, I think, and we can go ahead and move on. And
Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to fill the vacancy with a recommendation. Who would like to make that motion?
I'd like to make that motion.
What motion would you like to make? Who do you recommend?
Got a bit of a monologue here. That's okay. So I want to emphasize that I think everyone who applied for this vacancy would do an incredible job. And for me, there's no obvious choice here. I don't think this is an easy decision to make, and I would happily serve with any one of those who applied. So given that just about all of the applicants were of equal measure in their professional experience, I decided to make community involvement my key indicator. And while each applicant has obviously extensive passion for our community, I think one stood out to me as someone who has gone to bat for Taneytown every day. And I don't say this to diminish the involvement of anyone else. So tonight, I would like to formally nominate Christopher Tillman to fill our vacancy on the council.
All right, we have a nomination for Christopher Tillman to fill the vacancy. Is there a second to that motion? All right, I don't hear a second. The motion fails for lack of a second. Does anyone have another suggestion they'd like to try?
I would like to nominate Beth Cheney to fill the position.
All right, there is a motion to nominate Beth Cheney to the vacancy. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. Anyone care to offer discussion?
She's currently on our Parks and Rec board. Well, I'll talk to you after the meeting if you want.
So we have a motion from Councilmember Foster with a second from Councilman Haynes to appoint Beth Cheney to the council vacancy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. All right. I will contact Ms. Cheney and arrange for her swearing in on Monday evening then. I will now entertain public comment for agenda items this evening. If you'd like to speak, please come up to the lectern. Okay. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And may I have a second to that?
Second.
All right, all in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed, say nay. All right, we are adjourned. See you all Monday evening.